It is my pleasure to introduce our esteemed speaker today, Mr. Mahalingam, co-founder and CTO at Chara Technologies, who is a graduate of IIT Madras and RPI New York. Mr. Mahalingam is a technocratic leader with over 15 years of experience in designing and building cutting-edge products. His career spans a range of industries, including renewable energy, Internet of Things, fintech, and automotive technologies. At Chara, he leads the development of rare earth free motor controllers and advanced control algorithms, pushing the boundaries of innovation. We are privileged to have Mr. Mahalingam with us today to share his insights on jumpstarting a hardware tech startup from India. He will walk us down memory lane to share experiences and insights from his journey so far, and how every choice, failure, and lesson learned so far has led him to where he is today. Now, I would like to Ashwini to take over.
I just recently got feedback from my boss that I talk too much, but I still haven't learned. Looks like. Thank you. Yeah. So as you were saying, they said that they invite successful alumni to come here and talk about their career. So I don't know why they called me, but here we are. So I'm Mahalingam Koushik. I did my BTech. I was here from '99 to 2003. I'm so old. The hostel that I stayed in is no more. They built a new Mandak, right? So yeah, I was in elect department. So this is going to be. I'll go back. Sorry. This is going to be. I'm going to tell about my experience and all the mistakes I've made, so you guys can learn from it. And also, I've tried to put in some jokes. So if you're not educated, at least you'll be entertained. So what's next after IITM, right? So I graduated in 2003, and then I went to do my PhD in power electronics at RPI. So Geeta Krishnan was my roommate there. So any Jason Mraz fans here? There is a line, I think you guys have made. Oh, okay, good. So there is a song Wordplay. So the line goes, the sophomore scene is an uphill battle, and someone said it ain't my scene. So that's what it was like for me during my graduate school. So I, instead of doing a PhD in power electronics, I did masters with major in video gaming and minor in Indian cooking. And then I joined a startup in New York City. We were building VSAT solutions for merchant navy, and it was really good company. I enjoyed working there. My first experience trying to build something. So I went there, and there was these old Russian guys in the lab, and they were like, "Hey, solder this." He's like, I don't know how to solder. They were laughing at me like, you're an electrical engineer. You don't know how to solder. So I learned a lot there. Unfortunately, the investors actually had invested in for some other idea, and then they were pivoting to provide this VSAT solutions. So the investors were not patient. I will come talk more about that later. So it was shut down. And then I was at Maxim Integrated Products for about a year and a half, part of the ESG team. It's a very good semiconductor company. It's now part of Analog Devices. But when I was there, the share price fell from like $22 to $8. So they got wise and let me go. So I came back to India in 2009. Most of my career in India, I've been working in startups. So the first company was Duron Energy, where I was building solar products for rural market, and it was a really good experience. I was leading the hardware design and then the entire product development, including the firmware and managing their customer support and all that. And then the next startup, there was a management change and the culture totally changed in Duron. So I then joined Rural Bridges, where we were building a GSM based solution for farmers. Basically, the farmers have their pumps in the middle of nowhere, and during that government in that time, the electricity situation in India was great. So they'll get power in the middle of the night, and then it will go off around 4 o'clock. So what this does is, as soon as the power comes, it will either turn on the motor pump and then send them a message, or if it's during civil hours, it will call them, and then they can request it to turn it on or off. It's IVR based solution. So it was a really good product, but the target customers don't spend money. So So we were not able to raise funding there. So I left that and I joined Kanha. Also, my parents was trying to get me married. So they wanted me to work somewhere with some semblance of stability. So this is a Reliance funded company. So we were trying to build this point of sale device. It's a multimodal point of sale device. It had swipe and then chip and pin and then NFC, fingerprint, a camera on the back, a camera on the front. Don't ask why. And then support for thermal printer, whatnot. And it has to fit in your pocket. So this was the requirement we got, and we built it. And then we realized that we need to get it certified. And then the certifying agencies are none of them are in India. So we found something in Canada, somebody in Canada. So none of the team had any clue, including me, on how to do it, but they told me to do it. So I traveled to Canada and then understood how we make our device certifiable, and I was taking care of that. Initially, I was doing the hardware, then I took care of the this, and then I realized that basically what we built was a white elephant, and nobody will buy it. And then they said like. I don't know, there is a parota suri joke like "Ella kote ayingada." We started again trying to build a low cost product, and I know this was not going anywhere. And then I found EasyTap, where they were doing the same thing, but they were doing it in a much better way. So I reached out to Bhakta on LinkedIn, and I wanted to work there. I went and met him, and he was ready to hire me, but they were just worried about Reliance, so they took me as a consultant. So there started my days as a free agent. So I was a consultant at EasyTap for 6 months. Built NFC for them, built GSM support for them, and then built a device that connects. Basically, some of the older Android phones, they have only USB device mode, and then their device also had a device mode. So I made a bridge which connects. It had two host ports, so it was connecting to either side. So I was doing that at EasyTap for 6 months first, and then 3 months later again. In between, I was working at this startup called PlugX, renamed as Air5. So there we were trying to make something in the home automation space. Basically, it's a box that fit inside the switchboard, and it will connect to all the switches, and it will connect through Bluetooth or Wi-Fi. And you can try to open an app on your phone instead of walking to the switchboard and doing that. You have to now open an app on your mobile phone and then go to that room, and then so yeah. You can guess how well that startup went. Then I was at ThinkBot, where we were using slightly better technology. We used something called the 6LoWPAN, which is the open source equivalent of Zigbee, and the technology was really good. We had proper mesh networking and all that, and the UI UX also was really good. So it was a really world class product, but then we are trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist. So and then I said, okay, enough is enough. By now I had a son already, so I had to figure out something stable. So went and joined Intel. I was at Intel for about close to 2 years. The Intel makes these processors, right? i5. So they have these different families that come out every year. They have this tick tock cycle. So in the tick, I think they change the process, and then the talk they change the microarchitecture. Maybe I'm saying it the other way, but yeah. So they were trying to go to the 7 nanometer node. They're still trying. So so I made the motherboard on which they put the processor, and but then the processor never came. And then I joined another group in Intel where they were making. There is something called Curie that Intel made. Like they had Galileo and then Curie. These are for IoT applications. Galileo was kind of trying to match Raspberry Pi, and then Curie was like a very small module. STM had similar modules where you have a microcontroller and a bunch of sensors on board with some edge AI and all that. So there was a team in India which was building products using these. So we were working on cricket bat sensors and like a motorbike sensor, like a helmet sensor, and a bunch of products. But most of my time was spent in coffee breaks and out of office emails. So, and then I joined Harman. So at Harman, we were trying to build like an Alexa that fits inside the car. This one here. So it's basically like an Alexa in a car, and then it connects to the ODB port. So it collects data about the car as well, and then it's a companion for you. So that's what we were trying to build, but then the project got shut down. Then I was moved into another team where we were making telematics for automotive customers. So I traveled to China, Taiwan to meet MediaTek in France. And then basically I am a builder, and then they wanted me to do cost optimization and customer management and all that. So and then so I started playing video games. So I was playing this game which is basically like a 10v10 like an online server. You enter it, you stay there for 7 days, and there is a long battle, and then you can plan your moves days ahead. But then when the enemy's move becomes visible, you have to make a change. So there was a time I had to make a change within 15 minutes, and I was in a meeting, and my online friend he had my number, and he was calling me frantically. So I ran to the washroom to make the change. So, yeah. So then obviously they let me go. So then I joined Sadamac. No, I resigned. Yeah. So I joined Sadamac. It's a really good company. They do really good job. It's a master class in how to build a hardware startup from ground in India. So it's a IIT Bombay startup, and they have fantastic IP, really good products. They were really struggling. Automotive market is very difficult to penetrate because the customers are extremely risk averse and they don't want to try anything. So I'll tell you what Sedamac was doing was they're building this integrated starter generator. So if you see any two-wheeler, there is a dynamo that basically generates power from when the engine is running, and then there is a separate motor and clutch assembly for cranking the engine, right? So what Sedamac did is, why do you need these two motors? Both are motors. So they built an intelligent controller which runs the dynamo as a motor to crank the engine. So they said we will not change anything. Just remove all the clutch and starter motor. The challenge there is that starter motor is designed for a different purpose to actually put a lot of torque and rotate the engine. But the dynamo is when the engine is already running and you just borrow some power. I mean, basically take some power out, right? So to make the dynamo run as a starter or as a cranker, it's very complicated. So they developed really good algorithms. And one more thing they did is the thing that fails in this integrated starter generators were available like for bigger power in like for cars and planes and all, but not for the two-wheeler, three-wheeler market. So one of the things that often fails in the ISGs is the sensor. Basically, there's a position sensor in the dynamo that fails. It's a hall sensor. So when there is high temperature or vibration, it fails. So they said, okay, we'll remove that part. So they decided to do sensorless. Now, sensorless motor control also is a proven technology, but when you have to crank the engine, you have to have full torque at zero speed. So that means that you need to have very good understanding of the position of the rotor when the motor is not spinning. So there was no technology to do this. So they developed their own IP to do this, and that's patented. Today they are, I think, doing like upwards of 600 crores per year. It's a fantastic company. And the two challenges was that it was a bit of a misfit for me because basically they did all their work in MATLAB and Simulink, and basically I was fish out of water. I've never touched MATLAB in my life. And then there were these guys like you who graduated and come, and then they were just running circles around me in MATLAB and Simulink. So then there was a bit of a one-upmanship kind of culture there, which I didn't like. I didn't like it in IIT also, but yeah. So coming to that's a nice segue to what are my lessons from these MNCs and from the startups. Hopefully, I don't get sued. so, so startups, I don't care because they're not there anymore. But so broadband maritime, right? So yeah, like I was saying, the investors wanted that company to build like an internet solution for Middle Eastern or like Eastern Europe where there are more Jews. That was why they had invested in the company. But then that was not going anywhere, and then the CTO got a call from somebody in the merchant navy saying that they are losing crew because once somebody comes on a ship, the mobile explosion was happening. This was in 2006, right? So they usually get the crew members from Philippines and all this like Southeast Asia, Asian countries, and there was mobile explosion was full on. And once somebody comes on the ship, they are completely disconnected from their friends and family. So nobody wanted to be crew on the ship. So because the connectivity was really bad on ship, so that's why they pivoted to this, and then they started building this. But then the investors were like, what about Eastern Europe and my Jewish brethren? So so that's why they what they did was, okay, if your product is so good, let's go list in the public market. So they went public through the SPAC route, and I didn't know what SPAC meant before that happened. So, and then my CTO was like, "No, this is not done. You're putting a baby on Olympic track." So, that's the company went red. And then I was at Maxim. So Maxim, yeah, the lesson is that I was part of the ESG support group. So the first 6 months was heaven for me because I studied power electronics and ESG devices very similar. So I was learning a lot, and it was very exciting. I attended a few conferences and all that. But then it became very repetitive. They have a cookbook, and the designers have to follow the cookbook, and then you have to police them, like, hey, why didn't you do this, why didn't you do that? So, and the review and give the feedback. So it became very repetitive work, so it was not very exciting for me. Then I came back to India, and then I was working at Duron. So yeah, so here when you're trying to build something, the common mistake is that make something shiny and then somebody will come and buy it. But what I learned is that first figure out, is there somebody who wants it, and are they ready, willing and capable of paying money to buy it, right? So that was a big lesson here, because we were trying to sell to farmers. And so there was an exercise done where all the team went to some village in outskirts of Bangalore, and we tried to sell. And then we were showing, like, this is a solar product, and then it gets charged and you get lights. That guy was showing like a torch which he gets in the market with a battery in it, right? And he says, yeah, this is 100 rupees, yours is 5,000, why will I buy this? We are saying, no, you have to use electricity to charge it. He's like, yeah, electricity is free for us. So ಯಾವಾಗ ಎಲೆಕ್ಟ್ರಿಸಿಟಿ ಇದೆಯೋ ಚಾರ್ಜ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ತೀನಿ, like that. So sorry, Kannada. Whenever there is power, I'll charge it and I'll use it. After 6 months, I throw it and buy a new one. That's all. So yeah, then we were at Rural Bridges. Same problem in a slightly different version, trying to sell something to farmers who are used to getting everything free. So yeah. And then the CEO had feature mania. He wanted to put every feature that he could think of when smoking into the product. So then I was at Kanna, again the same problem. I explained already. We're trying to build a white elephant with all things. And then yeah, so this is a bit risky statement, I should have removed. But yeah, generally Reliance invests in companies with a scheme, like they will give some money and take some equity and give some milestones. If the company doesn't hit the milestones, Reliance takes more and more of the company until it becomes a part of Reliance. So they end up paying less taxes, or the company succeeds. So yeah, then I was at EasyTap. It's a great startup. The only mistake I made here was that I didn't stay there long enough. I was supposed to get converted to a full-time employee after 6 months, but then I got attracted by the next startup, so I left after 6 months. So yeah, so they, one mistake I think they made was that they had the V1, which was just a swipe, and then V2 was a chip and pin, and then the V3 was with NFC and few other features. The V3 took a long time. So I joined in 2013. 2013 December. Yeah, 2014 January, my son was born, and then I was there 6 months. And then I had left for Airfi, and then after Airfi was not going anywhere again, because they made a Bluetooth prototype, showed to the investor, and said that we will launch it in 3 months. And then the CEO heard from somebody that Wi-Fi is better because you can connect 255 devices to your so, because there are 255 numbers in the IP address, but the home routers only support 5 or 6 because they have limited memory, right? So they were trying that and it didn't go anywhere. Then the investor lost patience, and of course it was not a real problem. You just go there and do that. Instead, now you have to open your phone, open an app, go to the page of the room, and then touch it. With voice, home automation makes sense, but not without voice. Yeah. So yeah, again, you need patient capital and you need to solve a real problem, and then the tech stack is really important. Yeah, I think in this order. Yeah. So coming to the next startup, having not learned my lesson, try to work for another home automation startup. So at this time, I was part-time at EasyTap, and they were still building the V3. So the V3 was a mistake at EasyTap, I would say. Bhakta also agrees. So at ThinkBot again, we were trying to raise money from a HNI who was in the real estate business. So only place where this product worked was we tried to sell to builders because they don't have anything to differentiate from the other builders. So they put it in their build house and say we have modern homes and all that. So that was the only place it added some value. Again, we didn't have funding there. Then yeah, Intel and Harman. I won't say too many risky things. Just that find a good team and manager if you want to work for a MNC, right? And then Sedamac, yeah, like I said, it's a great company. They're doing very well. The only thing I think they can do better for people like me, I'm a very people oriented person. I keep talking to people in a flight. I talk to both. I sit in the middle seat, talk to both guys. So, for people like me, that individualistic culture was really didn't sit well with. Yeah. So coming to the next chapter, yeah.
Hi, sorry to interrupt. You said timing is key to market for tap to pay. 2013 is quite early for building tap to pay, right?
Right.
Is that the problem?
Yeah, it's part of the problem. Yes. So actually, when we started Kanha, the Reliance company, original idea NFC was just becoming a new thing. So the idea was to make an NFC reader for closed circuit use case. Like Reliance was planning to launch Geo Money and use it in all the Reliance stores, like a wallet. So that was the initial use case. So we thought, okay, we'll make a $20 product which just has a NFC reader and people get tags or cards. They use it and the money gets deducted from their wallet.
Not for Visa, MasterCard, debit card.
That's where they started getting greedy. Then they said, no, we have to support regular credit cards too. And then we started adding swipe and swipe. And then there was a news that by 2014 or something, government will ban all the swipe devices and we need to put chip and pin. So we put chip and pin, and then NFC was already there. Then they said, okay, an NFC for Visa Master is also coming soon. So let's plan for that. So and then once you put the chip and pin and NFC, you have to be compliant with PCI PTS, the certification. So yeah, so one thing led to another, and then our CEO had a great idea that let's put a camera on it because sometimes when people come to the shop and buy a big ticket item, they go out and then they call their credit card company saying that hey, somebody stole my card and swiped it for 50K. So the idea was that when the guy is billing, he will also take a photo of the customer so that they have proof to show to the credit card company. But then they showed the prototype to Mukesh and he was like, why is the camera on the back side? It should be on the front side. So we put a camera on the front. And then we had to have a keypad because for PCI PTS back then, you need to have a keypad. You can't do touchscreen pin entry. Now the touchscreen pin entry in the V3 of the standard touchscreen is accepted. But then they keep changing the number layout, right? This is really confusing. It's part of the security standard. Yeah. Sorry. I hope I answered your question. Yeah, that's what trying to do something so perfect. It's like the perfect is the enemy of the good enough. Was exactly what it was. I'll continue. Any more questions? Okay. So coming to the next chapter. So I am now a co-founder and CTO at Chara Technologies. I was working with Bhakta earlier. So Bhakta is our CEO, and at EasyTap I was part of his team. So I came to know through the grapevine that he is planning to exit EasyTap, and so I went and met him. I ranted to him about Harman for 2 hours, and then I told him I'll join your next venture. And he was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I said, doesn't matter, I'll join. And interestingly, luckily, it happened to be in an area where I have some expertise in power electronics. So that's why we got together and started Chara. The idea initially was that we wanted to build components for electric vehicles, all the technology that goes into electric vehicle. So yeah, I changed to identification. So if you look at our old logo, it will have something that looks like a battery and also like a motor. So our idea was we'll make battery packs also and BMS and motors. So everything somebody needs, they can take from us and build a vehicle. But then many investors said like it was too ambitious. You're trying to boil the ocean. If you want to do this, maybe wear Kashaya. We want to change the world. So that's why we said, okay, let's focus on motor because a lot of companies doing batteries. And it's a $1 billion problem if you want to do something worthwhile in batteries. So motors at that time, there were very few companies doing in India. So with motors, the challenge is there are a lot of, see why we doing Chara, right? So it's EV. There are a lot of sunrise industries, and it's a long-term positive trend. So the electric revolution is here. And now it's very obvious. All the campus buses are electric. Sujata was telling me. So everybody is adopting electric. There has been at least 3 attempts, 2 to 3 attempts in the past to make things electric, but looks like we may succeed this time. So and then sustainability is becoming a really important topic, and doing something sustainable makes business sense finally. And critical mineral demand, people have woken up to this, right? So when we were pitching in 2018-19, and we said, oh, rare earths are coming from China, people were like, so what, so many things are coming from China, even the toy my kid is playing with is coming from China. But now after COVID, and people are now realizing that it's a vulnerability, and then there is this China plus one and ABC. Don't want to get into too much politics, but yeah. So and then we are doing a hardware deep tech startup with a manufacturing focus, and because we are focusing on Atmanirbharta and Viksit Bharat, so there is a focus on manufacturing in the country from the government, and a lot of big industries who are typically traders, like buy something, sell something, kisme zyada munafa hai. But now people are like, okay, let me manufacture something, and yeah. So because manufacturing takes a lot of time and very painful, but you can have lasting results. And we think for a country to go from developing nation to a developed nation, we have to be independent in our manufacturing. So we can't be dependent on somebody else. And the other point is, this is very recent, I would say maybe the last 10 years. India is now a market where you can sell anything. I don't know if you guys saw the news that Lamborghini said India is the fastest growing larger markets, among the larger markets, right? So people are willing to pay money if you add value. So there is a market for any product, provided you are solving a problem and you're adding value. Yeah, which brings me to the last point. We are solving an actual problem. Anybody can guess what is the hardest part in doing a startup?
Funding.
Yeah, true. Funding is capital is oxygen. I agree with you. I would say the hardest part is execution, but then the second hardest part is finding a problem that actually needs to be solved. Right. So that's what I think Bhakta has a knack for. So we landed on a problem that people need a solution for. We can't be dependent on these rare earths, because rare earths are not actually rare. They are fairly abundant, but they're found unevenly around the globe. There are multiple problems. The three things which are our favorite is, one is that they are mostly found in the topsoil, and the reason why they are called rare earth is there are these 17 elements at the bottom of the periodic table called lanthanides. Other elements don't like them, so they are found very less in the ore. So if you take a ton of iron ore, after extraction processing, you end up with 500 to 600 kilograms, so 50 to 60% yield. But if you take a ton of the rare earth ore, you will get like 25 to 40 grams of the different each elements, right? So they are very rare in the ore, and then mostly they are found in the top region of Earth's crust. And because their atomic weights are similar, you need to use very strong chemical agents to separate them. So you are polluting the soil, you're creating a lot of dust, and then you're polluting the water. And some of the elements found in the mix, like thorium, uranium, are radioactive. So the waste is radioactive. So last but not least, our friendly neighbor has 90% control over the extraction and supply chain of this rare earth mineral. So yeah, all our neighbors are friendly, but I'm sure you guessed which one I'm talking about. So there are a lot of cancer villages in the western part of um so uh so that the country problem is a short-term problem, but the ecological problem and the environmental scaling problem is a long-term problem. Because and then people ask, right, what is the big deal? Every metal, aluminum, steel, copper is also mined and extracted. If you see today, 95% of the aluminum is recycled. So only 3 to 5% is virgin alloy, and virgin alloy is very expensive. Whereas if in the rare earth, 85% plus is freshly mined and extracted, and only 10 to 15% is recycled. It's a very recent thing that they are recycling. Maybe in another 15, 20 years, the recycling market will be set up so that we don't have to keep ruining our lands, trying to clean up our skies. So for the next 1 or 2 decades, we need to solve this problem, right? So there are multiple ways to solve it. One is you can also start mining and extracting. Rare earths are not only used in motors but also in defense, in aerospace, in GPS, in displays. Displays need some metals. We need them. There is a necessary evil, but we are trying to solve one part of the problem. We don't think motors need them. So we are building motors and controllers without any rare earths. So that's how we are solving the problem through technology. Some people are making. There's a company called Niron Magnetics in Minnesota. They're making iron nitrate magnets, which are not as good as rare earth magnets, but good enough that you can use them instead. So this is what we have done in the past close to 5 years. We started in November of 2019. So we have 6 products. Over here, these are all in production now. We have about 15 customers. Two for two-wheeler, 2 motors for 2 wheelers, 3 motors for 3 wheelers, L5 passenger cargo and 1.5 ton cargo, and then 1 product for industrial applications. And then we have 2 more bigger size motors which are under development. So these are the advantages that I mentioned: lower cost because you don't use the expensive magnets, lower footprint obviously, and zero supply risk because all the materials that go into our motors, steel, copper, aluminum, and ferrite magnets, they are locally available not only in India, in many places around the world, right? And these motors need a lot of software control. That's where it's a challenge because these motors are steel by its nature is non-linear. You might have studied about BH curve and hysteresis, all that, right? So if in a permanent magnet motor, I'm simplifying, but in a permanent magnet motor, if you apply 10 amps and you get 10 Newton meter torque, you apply 20 amps, you will get 20 Newton meters. Not so here. So you need to know what is the current that you need to apply to achieve torque at different speeds and different rotor positions, right? So the torque required and the speed and the rotor position. So the current is a function of these 3 variables, and it's a complicated lookup table. So solving that and then figuring out the right optimum position is what we have been doing. And there are synchronous reluctance motors in the market, but largely for industrial applications, which is a single load point. So you spin up to a speed and then load it at a known load and then you spin down. That's what they do. But here in EV, you need to have good performance at low speed, maximum torque, stall torque, and then rated performance, peak performance, half throttle condition, and then you have to reach the top speed also with sufficient amount of torque. So that is what we are doing, and our solutions are proven. A bunch of our customers. Okay, I think that slide is not there. Maybe we'll just go back like this. So we have about 15 customers. They've all ordered samples, and we've delivered about 70 motors. Some of our customers have tested for 5,000 kilometers plus and given very good testimonials and ordered repeat orders. We have 2 customers who have placed repeat orders, and 2 more are coming this month. And we are targeting about 4,000 motors by March of next year with a revenue target of 9 to 10 CR. So this motor's average selling price is 25K. So 25 to 30K. So that's what we're doing. So we do the motor and control of both. And then the control software, that's key to our solution. So even if somebody gets a hold of our motor and our controller electronics, they will still not be able to duplicate it. So that's our moat that investors like. So I want to talk about this a little bit. So like I said, we started in 2009. Yeah, this was the old logo I was talking about. So it looks like a battery and also like a motor. So we are building a product that's designed and developed in India for India and for the world. So after we got our first customer order for HVAC, we went to this place called Vidyarthi Bhavan in Bangalore. It's very crowded, very old restaurant. It was just after COVID restrictions were removed, so we were still wearing our masks. And then early 2021, we did this in-out session to figure out our value systems. And then this is a picture of our first motor which we made for HVAC application. And before we got our institutional funding from Kalari and IMA, we got a grant from IASC through the Department of Science MSME grant in 2020. So this is the team from IASC where we are showing the motor that we had developed for that project. And then very recently, I think like December of last year, we inaugurated our factory in Pina. This started out as a proto shop. where we make the protos. Our idea was okay, we'll design the motor and the controller, build protos, show the people, and then license it out. And then they will manufacture and pay us royalty. We'll sit back on our sofa and collect checks. And the customers were like, nice try. So, because they have 1,000 headaches and they didn't want to add one more to that, they said, okay, fantastic technology, fantastic product, give me the motor, I'll pay you. So, this was our proto shop, then we converted it into a factory. So, today we can make 500 to 600 motors a month. And then controller, we are largely outsourcing because it's electronics. There's a lot of established contract manufacturers. Okay. How are we doing on time? Okay. Yeah, we're okay. So, and then this is a end of line testing machine. So, these are some of the most expensive equipment that we usually buy from third party vendors. We bought one which is a lot more complicated than this from this company called Saj, and literally broke the bank for us. We paid like 90 lakhs to them. But then we built this on our own. This is much more simplified version of that. So we just did a puja of this like last month and we've started using it. So yeah, so coming to here, so we started in 2019. That's when we registered the company. And then in 2022, the first LCV motor was tested. And then in 2023, we decided to pivot to the product model after raising some more money. And so in 2024, we did a rebranding and then we have finalized the motor specs. And then we've got the first stage of deployment where 15 customers have tested our motors and a few have placed repeat orders. And our target is by March of next year, we want 4,000 motors deployed. And by the end of 2025, 15,000 motors deployed. And then, yeah, that's just numbers that Patta has put there to make our investors happy. Yeah. So I want to spend a bit of time here. So this is like dream job for me, but still there are challenges. There are days when I don't want to go to the work. So I want to spend some time here, right? So one is that we have to do this multidisciplinary development. So we have to make electromagnetic design, we have to have mechanical design, we have mechanical analysis, structural analysis, thermal analysis, then electronics design, and then the firmware. And so firmware guy is like, okay, change this very fast or something. But then mechanical guy needs to take a lot of time. If something goes wrong, we have to, now we are finalizing our tools for the housing and all that. So the mechanical guy is so scared to sign off on it because if something is wrong, his head is on the line. So yeah, but we have to do that. And then this is the second point is a fairly a sore point. There are still some recs open where we are trying to find good people. It's very difficult to find people that do this kind of work and actually work, right? There are a lot of good people working in big MNCs, but then they got used to presentations and emails. So yeah, and then manufacturing and managing vendors is a big challenge. So people think that China is succeeding because they sell cheap stuff, but China has stopped being the lowest labor destination long ago. The reason why they are successful is they are way ahead of the rest of the world, including the US, in terms of manufacturing materials. So I'll give you one story. I usually design electronics. So we make stencils where we put the stencil on the PCB and then mount the components. So we have to give the stencil to our electronics manufacturing supplier like 2-3 weeks before when we go to the actual assembly. Then they make the stencil. They say, okay, stencil is ready, come, right? So we go there and then the first run is done. This is how I have experienced in India. Then we tried one board in China for I think Harman or something, I don't know. And we went there. The guy has mirror image the stencil. So the stencil is a mirror image of the PCB. And I was like, oh my God, I have to go back and answer to my boss. And all. He said, okay, 5 minutes, he said. And he went and he came, not in 5 minutes, but like 25 minutes with a new stencil, which is split the right way. I was like mind blown. And then recently there was a Tim Cook interview, right? He was saying why I went to China, why Apple is in China. He was saying that, if you try to fit all the tool makers in the US, they'll probably fit like a conference room. And I think those in India, good tool makers in India will probably fit in a toilet. Whereas in China, the good tool makers will probably fill like 4 or 5 football fields. So that's why they are in China, right? I need the best for my phones and the best is in China. So that is where we have a long way to go as a country. But even a lot of people advise us, please go to Chinese vendors, you will get your tool working properly and all. But we want to support Indian local vendors. They're not bad, but they just need to have some change of mindset. There are a lot of vendors doing good job in India, like, but they are used to doing mass production. Once they prove a tool, they just keep on doing. When somebody comes with, I want a new one, I want to make 100 numbers, they're like, no, I am doing 1,000 a day. If I interrupt my line to load your tool, I will lose 1,000 unit business. So that's where it takes a lot of effort trying to work with them. And then even when you're paying them, they treat you like they're doing you a favor. So yeah. So then coming to business development, again, business development, our target segment is fairly risk averse, and they are very careful for good reason. Otherwise, you have a scooter in the market and the fork is breaking away. So we don't want that. So that's why they don't want to take a new technology, risk on a new technology without it being validated and proven, right? So that's what we're trying. And then fundraising and managing expectations, right? So the Indian startup ecosystem is used to a lot of software startups, software services, where it's like a blitzkrieg of growth, and then they show hockey stick curves and all. So investors are used to that, but we have very good investors. They are patient, and all of our investors have reinvested. We are trying to raise some money now, so if you know some good investors, please refer to us. But our existing investors are participating. So these are some of my lessons that I have learned. Hopefully, it will help you. So first point I want to say is don't be afraid to fail. So this is the major challenge I found working in MNCs, where it's very difficult to be for it to be okay to fail, where I am. So that's why I gravitate towards startups, because I had a classmate called Krishnan. When we do this labs, like machine lab and all, we do something and it will not work, and then I'll be like, oh, we should have done that. Then he'll be like, yeah, nah, why didn't you tell that before? So that's what I like to do: fail fast and learn from your failures. So yeah, and don't be afraid to start up on your own if you're enterprise. I mean, if you want to do something, right? And that was one of the mistakes. I wanted to be in startup, but I was afraid to start up on my own for the longest time, right? And then the second point, I think I've hammered this, beaten this dead horse to death. Find a real problem. This is the most difficult thing to do as a startup, but I found a lot of interesting startups in Nirman who are solving very real problems. Yeah. And then the third point is that you need a support system. It's a very very long and painful journey. So you need really patient, smart supporters, both for your company and at home. So your family has to sacrifice a lot. Like, I'm here for 2 days, my wife is taking care of my kids by herself. So yeah, so it happens. My father-in-law is here. So you need to build a great team and then ensure that there is teamwork and camaraderie. So this is something that really is close to my heart. That they say that the whole is bigger than the sum of the parts, right? So that's where you need to figure out how to work with people. I've seen that generally IITians are overachievers. So that means including me. So we are very impatient with ourselves and impatient with others as well. So sometimes that comes across as cynical and critical. So we need to learn how to work with people. So teamwork makes the dream work. So yeah, this is my last slide. Can anybody guess what the picture is? Sorry? This one. Not so high tech. It's a quiet tube flute. Yeah. It's the inside of a flute. So I'm learning how to play flute. So I'm going to play a small song. I heard that it's raining in Chennai. So I'm going to play Amrita Varshini wrong, so it stops raining. Should I answer questions before, or
It's up to how.
what do you guys think?
We can take answers later.
Answers later? Okay. Hopefully you guys walk or run out so that I don't get any more questions. career too, but that's okay. The point is that don't get straight jacketed into your career and try to do other things which will keep you de-stressed. Yeah. Thank you. Anyways.
Sir, I wanted to ask, so you started your career after a PhD in a startup, right? And then you moved on to working for Herman International. How difficult it is to portray that? I mean, how? I mean, what does it feel like to portray startup work to an MNC? Because obviously, I feel that MNC is doing the kind of stuff at least they publish is much higher quality as compared to startup, but you can learn from startup. So how does that work?
Okay. I don't agree with everything you said, but yeah, I'll answer your question. So the startup was very different to what I studied. They just evaluated me on my basic ability to think and solve problems. So after the interview, they asked me to come for a week, like an unpaid internship, to see how good I am at solving the real problems that they were having. And like, yeah, I really hustled in that week. Like Geeta knows what happened and all. So I used to stay with Geeta just before I joined the startup. So coming to the MNC, they mostly judged me on my academic credentials, I think, because I think the MNC job was not very related to what I was doing at the startup. At the startup, I was basically doing value engineering of their existing electronics for the large part, and then designing the next version of their control for like a stepper motor control. Basically, they were making a dish which rotates and then points at different satellites. So I was making stepper motor for the azimuth and the elevation. So that was what I was doing at the startup. And then in a ship, there is something known as heading, basically compass, right? That works on a phone, doesn't work on a ship because made completely of steel. So they have another way to figure out heading, and the heading information is available on the ship. And we need heading because we need to know which way the ship is pointed to figure out where the satellite, how relative to that, right? So we get that heading from the ship. So earlier there were multiple standards for this heading. Like there was a serial data and there was an analog data, and then there is a I think 8 by 20 milliamp signal and all that. So they had made this kind of a short of a white elephant which supported all of these, and then that was costing a lot. So all I did was I first found out that all the ships have been mandated to use serial data with an EMA standard. So after we figured that out, I just needed to buy like a serial to kind of a USB or something, and then connect it to my box, and then I just wrote the firmware to interpret that. And then same thing with the encoder. The encoder they were using for the azimuth and elevation was not working properly. Found a different encoder. And then for the stepper motor control, they had their own board, which was like catching fire. So found ready-made stepper motor controllers, which were half the cost and doing a very good job. So these are the most of the things I was doing in the startup. And then designing the next version of the brain. So that by then we got shut down. And then when I was interviewed by Maxim, they largely interviewed on my understanding of semiconductor physics in devices, because I was working on electrostatic protection, right? Discharge. So basically, we use IGBTs and MOSFETs to so that they will fail when there is an electrostatic discharge, and then main circuit is protected. So basically, they wanted to understand how strong is my power electronics and all that. So yeah. So but again, same thing happened, right? When I went from the startup to Intel. So earlier also I had interviewed at GE. The technical round was like about an hour, and then they were okay with that. But then the HR spent 2 hours with me understanding why I have changed so many jobs. So yeah, so that's a question that usually get when you work for a startup. There is a lot of uncertainty in your career, especially if you are as good as me at picking startups, which go under. So yeah, that's the challenge. I hope I answered your question.
And where do you make more money at the MNC start?
Typically at the MNC, startups are like a kind of a lottery ticket of sorts, right? So the chances of success is very low. But then you learn a lot, and then if this is what you want to do, you will never be happy in a MNC. So people are built different. So yeah, some people they know how to work in a MNC and they have very successful careers. Some of my classmates are like VPs at big organizations, and yeah, they're well settled. But yeah. I'm doing this. Thank you. Yes.
You said it was really challenging to find and work with Indian vendors. Can you tell me about how you tackled them? I assume you wanted some kind of customized tools or whatever requirements you had, and they were not very willing to do that, right?
Yeah.
We're facing similar problems. Can you give us some tips about that?
Yeah. So this is our model. This is a render, but yeah, we have actual products. One of the investors asked, "Why are you have render when you have the actual products?" So the render looks nicer. So this is the housing, and then this is the enclosure of the motor of one of the. I'm sorry, controller. So the enclosure here is made of fully of aluminum, but in some versions made out of plastic and aluminum. The heat sink is aluminum, and the top part is plastic. So for the aluminum, you need to do pressure die casting. And for the plastic, you need to do injection molding. But then early stages, you do machining for the aluminum and 3D printing for the plastic. Yes. So those are easy. Like a lot of people do that, and we didn't have any problem in the prototype stage. When we want to get into mass manufacturing, the guys who do this very well, both the injection molding and the PDC, right? When you want to go to a restaurant and have food, you usually find one that's busy, right? Because nobody wants to eat at an empty restaurant and get sick. So similar stuff. So you want to find vendors who are actually busy and almost don't want to work with you. That means they are good, right? If you go to somebody who's willing to do everything you want, then probably the output will not be good. This is what the hard lesson we learned. So similarly here we have this cap and then this cap and then the housing. In this motor, this is a liquid cooled motor. So this housing is smooth. But then the smaller motors we have, they are all air cooled. So to have good thermal design, I don't have that slide. I'll show you later.
We'll have
My
fins.
pictures. Yeah, there are a lot of fins. And the fins are circumference fins.
Okay.
So it's very difficult to make a tool where this thing comes out. So we have given to 3 vendors. All of them failed in the housing.
Okay.
So now we are talking to a bigger vendor who is doing like I think 1 lakh parts for ACG a month. He changes his tool every month because the tool life is 1 lakh. So he's doing 1 lakh parts for ACG and he's like, go away. He's like, no, sir, please, sir. We will also reach 1 lakh volume at some point. So we are trying to work with such guys. Yeah.
Yeah,
So you need to find
my
the right
real-
vendor.
Yeah, my real question is how did you convince them to do that for you?
Actually, one of our head of sales is ex-IFB, so he has some good relationship with some other vendors. And then our plant head also, he was working in Billforge, so he has some network. So basically, they need to trust you that you're not wasting their time. So that is the big challenge. Yeah, they don't want to disturb their steady income, so that it's fair on their side. So it's difficult, but there are entities like Karkhana who are helping to solve this problem. And Zetwork also, I thought they are solving this problem, but what I understand is more like, I may be wrong, but I may be oversimplifying, but I think most of the thing they do is like somebody wants 10,000 parts and then the vendor can make only 5,000. So they find 2-3 vendors who can make all the smaller batches, put together and give it to the customer. So this is what mostly Zetwork is focusing on today, I think. But yeah, Karkhana is one such entity who could help you there. But then they have some overheads. So your parts get expensive. Yes.
Yeah, so I know you're a CTO, but the general consensus about running your own business is that you need a business degree. So you had done postgrad in a fairly technical field.
Yes.
Has the lack of a business degree ever held you back from running your business? And if it has, how did you get out of it?
Yeah, almost every day I would say, because the customer asks for 1,000 things, like what is your 30-minute duty, 60-minute duty, and what is the temperature of your winding after you run it for 4 hours, like kind of tests which we don't even. One customer, what he did, usually we always mount a motor on a load, even at no load condition, we connected it and then run it, so the rotor heat is taken out through the shaft. Kind of cheating, but that's what people do with the motor, right? So there is a big thermal mass attached to your rotor. So this guy is single, doesn't have anything else to do. So one of our customers, so he put the motor on the desk without connecting anything to it and tried to spin it, and then the rotor was overheating. So I usually go on a rant, and Bhakta is like, wait, the customer wants it, we have to do it. So yeah, I'm learning that. Yeah, good question. Yeah, it's hard. Yeah.
So like majority throughout your career you majorly worked in startups, but being in IT it sort of gives us a fear of being left out with our peers, because we see them working in big MNCs and earning a lot and then achieving big things in their life. So what was the thing that kept you motivated, that you worked so long in startups?
Is RG still a thing or they?
Oh yeah.
So yeah, so we were just discussing RG in our classroom group. I think there is this urban legend, right? That one guy in every batch, he goes to the book bank and then hides all the books, so others cannot find it and all that. So yeah, so this is an extension of that, right? So this is what I found very very weird when I joined IITM, that people are trying to compete with each other. It was very antithetical for me. I don't know, somehow either I'm dumb or naive. I always want to compete with myself, right? So today I made 4 mistakes. Tomorrow I want to play by making only 2. So that's what I want to do, right? So it was kind of very difficult for me in the IIT environment when I saw that, I failed one course in the 3rd semester. The reason for that is very silly, but I can't tell it here. My marketing head said I'll get cancelled. So, so I failed one course in my 3rd semester. Then I got some. My brother is there. He was scolding me. I got some Rosham. And then 4th semester I was a 9-pointer. And then I heard that 2 of my classmates were discussing, and then they were saying, "Thank God he failed in the 3rd semester." So. Right. So yeah. So if you are comparing yourself to others, you will feel very sad because it's a very lone and long journey. This startup journey is not for the faint-hearted. So this is for people like who can't sleep unless they do what they want to do. Right. Yeah. I don't know if I am that guy, but yeah, trying. Yes.
So building a hardware startup requires an expertise in a lot of area. So when to evaluate that you should learn and do the thing, and when to evaluate that you should get it done from outside, or maybe hire someone, or when to see that, how to evaluate, when to evaluate.
Yeah, great question. Did you guys read? There is a Paul Graham article called Founder Mode. It went viral recently. So please read that. So what he says is that this professional CEOs generally tend to do the later, right? Get somebody, throw the problem at them, throw money at them, get it solved. But then the founders, they are very unsatisfied if they are trying to do that. So they always want to get involved in everything. And then like even in this PDC, I keep going to the vendor and giving my mechanical engineering team stupid ideas. But you need people to do the things, and you need to listen to them. Like you are hiring them to tell you what to do, but also you need to learn. So you have to do a bit of both. It's not a either or question. You have to do both.
So let's say when 2 people start a company thinking on an idea, but the product is so tech intensive that it takes a lot of R&D and all, at what time should we think that okay, we need to hire some people, or like what did it happen with you?
Yeah. So when we started, so Bhakta and I were ideating, and then we came up with this idea, and then I was designing the boards. I didn't know how to do. I can do simple PCBs using like KiCad and stuff, but I didn't know how to do slightly complicated PCB. Luckily, I had some friends, so we paid somebody like 30,000 rupees to design our first PCB, and then we paid somebody else another 20,000 rupees to solder the components, because I still don't know how to solder. So so these small things which are like low value add, you can get people to do for you. And Bhakta was writing the code, and we were in this shared office called IndieCube in south part of Bangalore. And then the motor was making so much noise that they threw us out. And then there was another startup. We borrowed a room in their office, which was building something in the EV space as well, so they didn't mind the noise. And then I was telling Bhakta that we should use PWM, and then Bhakta was like, no, we don't need PWM. And then at some point we started hiring people, and when we didn't have any funds and we were bootstrapping, we were trying to do everything by ourselves. So it was Bhakta and me, and then we got Ravi. Ravi is a 65-year-old guy. who has 40 plus years of experience on building, designing, building, and testing motors. And he used to build motors for Mini Group for the original Reva, and then he was working for doing some project for DRDO and then GE and all. So he knows in and out of the motors. We used to think that motor is a circular thing with the pointy end. Still, that's all we know about the motors. Bhakta and I. So so it was just the three of us, and Ravi had a person who used to work with him before. He is very hands-on. He knows how to wind and all. So there's four of us doing all of this, and I think he was in the picture too. Yeah, not this, sorry. Yeah. So this is me, Bhakta, Ravi, and Bhopal. And this guy helped us with the. So he's actually part of Staria now. His name is Gaurav. But they had some kind of downtime, so he helped us with the PCB design and all that. So we got some freelance help and all that. Yeah. So did that answer your question?
Yes.
So
but
after
how
we
did you-
raised money, then I told Bhakta that we should build a team, because even if a bus hits us tomorrow, Chara should still live on, right? So that's when we started hiring. And as and when things get too much, like even now I feel like I need that Hermione's locket, so I can keep going back and do multiple things. But so as and when things get too much for us to handle, we find somebody, or we realize we don't know. So business development, I am zero, right? To answer his question. And Bhakta has some experience in business development because of his Easy Tap experience. But this market is very new for both of us. So we were really grappling. And then now we have a professional CBO who understands the market, and things are going really well now.
But at the initial stage, how did you manage your finances? Like your own saving was there, or did you get fundings at the initial stage itself?
So when we started 2018-19, it was from own funding, Bhakta's own funding. I was penniless. So Bhakta put in most of the money. And then we got our seed funding in 2021. So till that we were managing, and then we got the grant from IAC. How that works is you spend the money and then you submit the bills, and then they pay you 75% up to 60 lakhs. So it helped us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
So you were in and out of many startups.
Yeah.
So when you had to make that transition from leaving a startup and going to an MNC, what exactly was your mindset then? Well, it seems like it was mostly passion driven.
Most of the startups was passion driven, yes. But then by then I had mouths to feed, so I needed a steady income. So that was my main motivation. And MNCs in India are doing good job. I mean, it's just that the setup, the way they work, and I am very adamant. I don't listen to people, so that's the challenge. So that's why MNCs didn't really work for me. But did that answer your question? Or?
So, if we talk about the expansion of Chara technologies, then means basically for energy sector, in oil and gas, for centrifugal packages, all those OEMs are there. So basically, they are procuring the electric motors.
Yes.
So they are basically facing the problem of higher lead time of their packages because of the delay in the supply of the electric motor to them. So do you find that these Chara will help help them in achieving their in supplying that product with lesser lead times compared to others?
Yes. So right now we are focusing on the EV sector because it's fundraising and there's a lot of interest for trying out new products and things like that. But we do have plans to get into the industrial segment where this oil and gas, they use motors and all that. Typically they use this induction motors in such sectors, which is lower on the efficiency but cheaper compared to our product. So they will have to spend a little bit more upfront to adopt a more expensive product, but then the energy savings will give them the return on investment. So that's the play we are trying. We are also thinking something crazy like this motor as a service, where we cover their delta upfront and then collect from their energy savings. So there's all this as a service. Their building management they're doing, and then they reduce the footprint of the building, energy bill of the building, and then they take revenue from that. So we are thinking about all this, but it takes a lot of capital to do all of that.
Okay, about that second challenge, which is that hiring good and productive talent.
Yeah.
So, how you are tackling that part?
Yeah. So, yeah, very good question. So what we do now is you can only do so much in the interviews, right? So if it's a hands-on job like soldering or PCB design or motor design, we give an actual problem for them to solve, and then we look at their report, what they have done, right? So kind of like what I did at Broadband Maritime, I did a 1 week of unpaid internship. So that's what we have them do. Even in structural engineering, anywhere. So we want, so people can throw terms and say like CFD and CAE, ANSYS Maxwell, everything will be in the resume. But when the rubber meets the road, we see what is the real capability, right? So that's what we do. And then the other thing we do, it sounds a bit ruthless, but we don't wait for long to fire. So if they don't perform within the 3-month period, we give them a warning. And if they don't improve, we put them on a performance improvement and then show them the door. I mean, they are good people, but then sometimes it's a performance, sometimes a culture fit. So there are people who work in MNCs who are used to having everything clear. Like the guy will say, I need all the requirements on a requirement document, right? PRD, and then I will open my laptop and start the design. But then that's not how you can do in a startup, right? We need to make something and then go show to the customer, and then customer says change this, change that. Today also I had a customer meeting, and then he wanted 5 things. And yeah, luckily I kept my mouth shut, so we still have that customer. So that's how startups work. There's a lot of ambiguity, and you have to take a lot of ownership, right? Typically in an MNC, suppose you want to do some simulation on a server, right? What do? You put up a request saying I want server time, right? So our lead CFD guy, he said I wanted a server. I asked him what are the specs. So he found the specs. I said go find vendors who sell this and get 3 competitive quotes. So he got the quotes, and then I said okay, go to the finance person and ask him to release a PO. So he had to do 10 things so he can do what he wants. Then when it came, figure out how to mount it on the rack and where to put it. So we were doing civil work. We made sure there is a server room for it, and he had to make sure that room is big enough for the rack. So yeah, the guy who was supposed to be doing CFD simulation was doing all of this. But yeah.
So, do you think there are enough people in the market who are willing to do this, since you have already been through this product talent hiring?
Yeah, I think so. I think there are enough mavericks who want to do something other than work in an MNC. And what we are doing is very interesting. Once you get adjusted to all these, so in the US Army, there is a term, right? Embrace the suck. So once you embrace the suck, then it's really enjoyable. Yeah. Yes.
In one of those moments when you go to and talk to the customer, and some customer put some somewhat realistic demand, but you can't afford to do that, how do you convince him that you are not able to do that, or you won't do that?
Yeah, very good question. It's very difficult because the customer wants what the customer wants. So so we try to like empathize and understand why he is asking for what he wants. Sometimes, see, actually one of the customers wanted to test their motor and controller in our test bench, right? So he said okay, I'll come, and he said I need to be able to measure torque ripple. So the torque sensors that we use, they don't give out torque ripple. Torque ripple is like how smooth is your torque, right? For that you need the signal very quickly, right? So we thought that output is not available, right? So we told him no, it's not possible. He said no, a lot of dynamometers have this output. So then we went to our vendor and asked him, like, is this possible? He said yes sir, there is a frequency output, but we have not enabled it for you. If you want, we can enable it. So sometimes the unrealistic expectation from the customer may actually turn out to be something good. So if you are willing to hear and try to do it, but then there are sometimes you can't do it, right? One of the customers was saying, see, there is something called regen we do, right? Where we feed power back into the battery pack. So you need to know how much power your battery pack can take. So that is dependent on the state of charge of the and state of health of the battery. So there is something known as battery management system, right? So which has this information because it knows the batteries like Kundli, right? When it was made and how long it's been used. So the state of health and the voltage and the current, all of this determines the state of charge. and then it tells you the state of charge. Then our control inverter decides how much current to push back into the battery. So this is what we told, like we have the region. So he said region is not working in your motor controller. So I said it's there, but we need this information either from the vehicle control unit or from the BMS. He said no, you know the battery voltage. Battery voltage is an indicator of state of charge. So you use that and do it. But then if we do that, we will have an early Deepavali. So so the battery will explode because the lithium ion battery curve is very flat, right? And then the voltage changes a lot depending on the state of charge and the current that is going into or out of the battery. So battery that is 100% or 90% charged and discharging will be at maybe 3.8 volts. But then a battery that is 5% charged but not discharging will be maybe at 3.9 volts. So there is no way of telling from the. So you say, okay, sir, thank you, sir. Yeah. Any other questions?
I think solution to this problem can be if we want to reduce the varieties and that standardization we can do. So how many models are standardized and suppose someone wants to take some orders, then first selection is from the standardized models or from their needs.
So these five products, we have made them in a modular way. For example, these two motors use the same diameter, so we can use the same tool for making the stampings. Okay, but we just change the length. Okay. Similarly, these, I think, So it's like modular, right? And then we are planning the kind of a cousin for each of them, shorter, longer, and all that, right? So that's one way of standardizing. And then the controllers are also standardized. We have for all of these five products, we have 4 controllers, but the circuits are very similar. We just play with the number of MOSFETs that we use, and then the voltage rating of the MOSFET. So we go from 48 volts, 60, 72, 96 for all of these products. This is running on 3-phase AC, so it's very standard. So this is a completely standard product. There is something known as 114 frame that is used in the industry. So basically what that means is the height from the base foot of the motor to the center of the shaft is 114 mm. So that is built as per the standard. In fact, the body, the shaft, the end cover and the stator stampings are all bought out. Only the rotor is something that we have made new.
Sir, like after how many years of your R&D you applied for IP? How does that happen? Because when we go out in the market, the first thing the investor would ask is, do you have any IP on your product?
Yeah, great question. So when we started, we were working on switch reluctance motor. So we thought we had really good IP on that, and we filed for 3 patents. So one of the patents is highly likely to get rejected. And then the second one, we got the FER, first examination. We went the PCT route. So we filed the provisional patent application, then PCT, Europe, EU and USA. And then now the first examination report came from the Indian government, Indian Patent Office. And we are fairly sure that it will pass through. Whatever the objections they have raised, we have responded for that. So the third patent is, so to answer your question, we started in 2019, but we filed the IP only after we got some funds, like late 2020, early 2021. Because it's expensive for us because we didn't. Actually, I could have come to IITM and got the IP for free, but I didn't do that.
And do you think like innovation happens on the way? Like when we ideate a thing, it's already there in the market. We might not think, okay, there's something innovated into it, but as we go on building a product, we might think of much more innovation.
Right. Yes. Yes, that's true. So you have to look out because IP is valuable. That's one way that startups are valued is based on the number of patents they have, right? It's debatable whether patents are good or bad for the ecosystem. But yeah, so there is some value attached to patents. So you have to keep an eye out, and I keep running this harvesting sessions. And we keep collecting ideas from the team, and then I have to keep prodding them. Hey, write up the IDF, invention disclosure form, and then the lawyer will come back with queries, and then I keep prodding them. Hey, respond to the lawyer. So yeah, so eventually it gets filed. Yeah. So far we have filed about I think 7 or 8 patents, and they're all other than the 3, the rest are in the early stage. The other 5 was the 3 was Bhakta, me, and Ravi. We filed those 3. The remaining 5 is by our team. in various areas, mechanical engineering and electronics and software. So in the region, for example, we have filed an idea. It's still under patent, so I can't tell.
Understood.
Yeah. Yes. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you so much for your inspiring and insightful talk. Your experiences and vision have offered us a fresh and enriching perspective on startups, the importance of investing time, and the need for the patience to do all these things. On behalf of Office of Alumni and Corporate Relations, we extend our deepest gratitude to you for sharing your valuable time and wisdom with us. Your insights will surely guide and motivate us as we move forward.
So anybody looking for an internship in all the things that we are doing, please come and talk to me. Yeah, thank you.
Then what does Chara means?
Chara means motion in Sanskrit. Yeah, so like Charaka, and then there is this sloka, right? Chara Chara Jagannatha. So yeah, that's what it means. So we think we are reimagining motors. Motors came from the Greek motion, so we give an Indian name for what we do.
So, do you go to campuses for placement?
We haven't done it till now, so I think we should start. Yeah. We can't afford US. By the way. Yeah, but we'll start doing it. Yeah. Okay, thank you.